Welcome, it's another Confessions podcast from your friends at Radio 2. We've cobbled together, crafted and made beautiful a nice collection of very sinful tales. Yes, it's another Confessions podcast from Radio 2. Here we go with this week's selection, which features nightly Ninja Naughtiness, baby Bassinet Buffoonery, very good, devil dog doings, and a sticky salad surprise. I just want to do a little Confessions update, by the way, which we don't often do. But here's a little one which came in just towards the end of last week from Brian. Simon and the Collective. It's Brian, the not so hilarious stone wrapper from the Confession. Remember, this was a fragrance.
Oh, this is ringing a bell.
Is
Go
it?
on. Yes.
I have to update. This was the present wrapping.
Yes.
Where someone had passed it on and pretended that some perfume was not actually perfume. I have to update you on the situation with my mum's present, as since I sent my confession, the consequences of my actions have become clear. I hate to admit it and give Matt the satisfaction, but his spidey senses were accurate, and it was indeed an excellent bluff from Mum to turn the joke back on me. She left me to stew for over a week, waiting for her boss to open the present before unveiling the fact that it was all a lie. I have to say fair play to Mum. She played me at my own game and turned the joke back on me. More worrying, however, is Inspector Matt Clouseau's ability to call out lies and uncover truth. Maybe we'll have to replace juries and indeed the entire British jury system after all.
Turns out I'm more Poirot than Clouseau. Oh, yes!
You're wasted here, Matt, clearly.
If you thought I was insufferable before, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Tonight's tale comes from Debbie. Thank you very much indeed. This is, let's see how Matt's spidey senses work with this one. Father Simon and the assembled listening ears. As many young people are packing up to head off to university round about this time of year, it's time, in fact way past time, I confess to something which happened in the early 80s at a seaside polytechnic, as they were before their heady elevation to university status. Think saucy postcards, a couple of peers, and the type of place you might find a few mods and rockers on a bank holiday. I wonder, is it Scarborough? It's a story about the importance of locking your doors, amongst other things. It all started in the halls of residence, imaginatively named H, J, K, L, M, and N. I was resident of the then named N block. N block was predominantly made up of young women, and J block, young men. I use the term loosely. The J block, young men, thought it would be a good idea to rate the girls on campus, giving their chosen girl a scorecard out of 10. To my knowledge, the score was based entirely on looks. This is a bit like the start of the Social Network movie, which is what happened there. One of the inhabitants of J block, let's call him leather-trousered Matthew, was in charge of this, ably assisted by loudmouth Sir Marcus, who was, as you might have guessed, doing teacher training. There's obviously an in-joke there about teacher training.
Is it Sir Marcus?
Leather-mouthed Sir Marcus. Yes.
Leather-mouthed?
We got leather-trousered Matthew and leather-mouthed Sir Marcus, who, as you may have guessed, was doing teacher training. Anyway, they both took the task very seriously, posting the results prominently in the canteen each week.
Charming.
Nice guys.
Yeah, what a catch.
One week, I was at number 4 as leg warmers Debbie, after an ill-advised night out. Anyway, back to the plot. The thing is, Father Simon and listeners, if they'd done their top 10 just once and been regretful, we may have found it in our hearts to forgive them, but it went on for several weeks, and action had to be taken. One of the residents of N Block, let's call her Jodie, felt more fury than most at constantly being in the top 10. She devised the plan. We decided to arrange a party in our block for these charming young men from J Block, and to avoid suspicion, a few others too. Quite a bit of planning went into this. The week before the party, we explored routes from their block back to ours and timed the fastest. We found black clothes and made sure that we could fit tights over our heads. The day of the party, I had the enviable job of heading into town to buy several bags of flour. Others hunted for ingredients to make a memorable punch. So the time had come. The party happened, and the guests left, none the wiser, but rather full of a rather strong punch. We donned our black clothes, we put our stockings over our heads, and each armed ourselves with a bag of flour. Jodie led the way. Somehow she managed to find her way to the canteen bins and scooped up many bowls of food that had been thrown out. Sneaking into the block, we found that the doors were open. all of them. None of them had been locked. We tiptoed in and sprinkled the flowery mix liberally over the floor, over the beds, and over the sleeping boys. In the flower we wrote 0 out of 10. Loudmouth Sir Marcus, Leathermouth Sir Marcus, obviously it was supposed to be Loudmouth Sir Marcus, got an extra dose. Covered from head to toe in flour and slops, they looked like zombies from another world, which in a way they were. Despite our lack of spy training, absolutely no one awoke. We slipped back to N Block and out of our disguise and never spoke again about it. Next day, there may have been a touch of suspicion, but as far as I know, to this day, no one knew it was us. Perhaps the J Block residents had annoyed so many people they didn't know where to look first. But most importantly, the letter's top 10 never appeared again. So Simon and assembled listeners, I'm asking for forgiveness not from the J Block boys, because they deserved every particle of flour and leftover food that they got. No, it's the cleaners I need to ask for forgiveness, who no doubt had to do the lion's share of the cleaning up, because I'm guessing the boys didn't do it. Well, anyway, it's comeuppance time, and I suspect I know how this is going to go. What a nasty bunch they are there in J Block. Sister Rebecca, speaking for the sisterhood, first to go.
I'm really glad that they didn't go on to succeed like Facebook did off social network, make loads of money out of the fact they were rating women on their attractiveness. I don't think it takes anyone to have like Matt's spidey senses to have deduced that it was actually these girls who they were rating who did the deed. But anyway, obviously these boys were a bit dim, or they were just terrified, and I think they got their comeuppance. But I do feel sorry for the cleaners, so for that reason only, Debbie, I'm not forgiving.
0 out of 10 in the flower, nice. Okay, what do you say there, Sister Bobby from the Priory?
It's easy, isn't it? Just desserts, really. And it's really lucky that you got away with it and they didn't wake up. But you also get to the situation that they made them very drunk. And I have to say, it's a very dangerous thing to do, to fill people with alcohol. Well, I'm just saying, just be careful out there when you're filling boys with alcohol. You know what happens. Anyway, just desserts, well done, girls. You're forgiven.
Feminist ninja stories, that's what I'd like to hear. If there are any more, then we'll happily take them. Confessions@bbc.co.uk. Spidey sense, Matt.
Well, here's the thing, is when leather trousered your man
Sir Marcus,
Julian and Marcus and the rest of them, what you're basically doing when you're rating these women with this list of yours is you're basically sending out the signal to absolutely everyone on campus, I shall be going home tonight alone, and indeed every night alone, because that is my opinion of the other sex. So, frankly, you've got everything coming to you, sunshine, and I think I speak for the nation when I say that was going to be how you were going to end up. So yes, definitely forgiven. Yeah. Apart from for the cleaners bit, because actually they sound like the kind of people who would just leave it to the cleaners. So actually not forgiven, because the cleaners would have had to have cleaned everything up.
Very good, nicely contained and really concise.
Yeah.
This comes from Mick. He sends in tonight's tale. Dear Father Simon, my confession is long overdue. I have lived for many years with the guilt and regret of the so-called practical joke that I played on my mother, and it's time to share my burden. My story starts in the ancient past. We're talking the 1980s. I was a strapping young man then, with a child in her first year. In those distant days, safety wasn't as we know it today, and when one travelled with a small child in a car, the tot could be transported in a purpose-built bassinet, which was little more than a thin green cardboard box with handles that would be placed on the rear seat and secured by straps placed around it. By modern standards, completely useless, but at the time, perfectly legal and acceptable method of transportation for a child so young. On this occasion, we travelled to spend time with my parents. On arrival, we would unstrap the bassinet from the car, carry said child inside, asleep, and when she finally woke up, we would play pass the parcel with the little one. Joyous days indeed. As the evening drew near, Nanny, who had a proper cot in her spare room, was thrilled at placing her sleeping granddaughter in the strong wooden bed, tucking her in with a gentle kiss on her forehead. Later in the evening, when it was time to go, I had the duty of quietly creeping into the bedroom and transferring the sleeping child from the cot into the mobile bassinet, then seamlessly into the car and away. As we all stood in the hallway, quietly talking between ourselves, I slowly edged upstairs with the carrier. I gently pushed open the bedroom door and peered into the cot, and there she was, standing, hanging onto the bars with a big beaming smile to greet me. There was little point putting this child into the carrier, so I tried to lift her out and carry her downstairs, but I was impeded by the bassinet, so decided to take it downstairs and pop back up to collect my child in a sec. As I turned from the landing onto the top step, the three people assembled at the foot of the stairs, my mother, my father and my wife, all softened their voices to a whisper and looked longingly at me carrying the bassinet. Matt already has his head in his hands, by the way. Before I had put one foot onto the next step, an imp appeared on my shoulder. At least that's my excuse. The perfect opportunity had presented itself to me. With my child safe in her cot, remember, I had nothing to lose. In that split second, I could make full advantage of my athletic qualities and my stuntman ability. One more step, now 2 from the top, slowly and quietly starting down the stairs. Shh, could be heard from the bottom. And then I did it. My foot slipped on the stair. Whoa, I said, and I started to uncontrollably crash down the stairs, doing my best to hold the baby carrier level. Up in the air it went as I tumbled further, my feeble attempts to catch the carrier, while at the same time crashing noisily to the bottom of the stairs, attracted screams from everybody. And then bang, the last 4 stairs I took in one action, majestically landing on the Dimplex night storage heater, which amplified the effect. To me, the look of terror and panic on all 3 faces was hilarious. But that's not how they saw it. My mother was a small woman of barely 5 feet, but as she looked inside the empty bassinet and then looked at my smiling face, it didn't stop her, uncharacteristically, swinging a right hook squarely onto my chin. My wife used language that doesn't become a lady, and my father, never one to show his emotion, tutted and walked away.
Oh, good for him. Yeah.
Many years have passed, and my child in the cot is now a mother herself. Perhaps this story should pass into history, but when mentioned at family gatherings, as these things tend to, I can feel the stress that I placed on my mother, and it's now time to seek forgiveness. So I leave it with you and your collective to make your decision. All right, you think that bit, okay? I've got no idea what's going to happen. Although, you know, Matt, his spidey senses could be a tingling. Anyway, well, it was an interesting everyone was perfectly safe, although who knows the effect it had on the heart of mother and father and mother.
Grandma,
yeah. What do you think there, Sister Rebecca?
I think it sounds like a fantastic comedy moment, but it is, it's a difficult one because he could have caused serious emotional damage to the entire family. I love the fact that he got a right hook from the diminutive lady. What was it? His
That's from his mum. No, it's from his mum's.
And so I think that he's already paid his penance for it, and therefore I'm actually going to forgive.
You're going to forgive?
Yeah.
All right, let's see what Sister Bobby makes of this.
Oh, well done, Grandma, for the right hook. I can't forgive, I don't think.
Violence, we don't encourage violence.
No, I was about to say, is look, no, violence is never
I'm
permitted,
shocked.
you know.
I'm shocked that you actually said that was okay.
Except if your life depends on it and dialogue has failed. But
well, we're not talking about international
but
crises
I'm just saying
here.
it's never a good thing. However, there are always times.
Is there anyone from the UN handy?
Can I just say, actually, the reason why it's not forgiven, because
Yes.
it's really quite serious. You really could
What?
have caused some serious damage to someone's situation into the heart. It really could have done. And not forgiven. Not forgiven.
All right, okay, well, let's see what is coming here.
I've been pretty clear on my thoughts on practical jokes. I'm never a fan of practical jokes. They are not funny, ever. And and also, though, I think the best reaction here was the reaction of the dad, tutting and walking away. It was, yeah, that's typical Mick. It's absolutely what we'd expect from him. I've had enough. I'm walking off. So I'm going to forgive because just because I'm sure that Mick never tried anything like that again, because he at that point realised that his practical jokes were not funny.
You suspect he's done quite a few, don't you?
I do. So in that case, I'm not going to forgive because I do suspect that he did more of them.
Dear Father Simon and the Rookie Collective, who's this? It's Alison. Thank you. I would like to ask the Almighty and a certain lady vicar in Orpington for forgiveness on behalf of our recently departed white German shepherd called Flo for her antichrist-like behaviour. This is a very specific introduction to a story. Flo the dog came into our lives, rescued, beautiful, vibrant and gorgeous, but with no known history. She was to give us an amazing, raucous, mystifying 10 years, and in that time she excelled at being able to surprise us with her antics, some of which were much to be desired, and almost all of the neighbourhood loved her. Well, everyone loved her, apart from the vicar, and this is why. We first acquired Flo from the local rescue centre, and she changed our lives. She was, she can only be really described as awesome. My husband and I first noticed her Antichrist-like behaviour shortly after her arrival. Well, it's different, isn't it?
Yeah.
Shortly after her arrival, when on a walk adjacent to the graveyard, she disappeared, only to return with a wooden cross between her teeth, looking incredibly happy and pleased with herself. My husband spent an hour or so locating the unmarked grave that she'd stolen it from. We thought it a one-off, but a few weeks later, in Wiltshire, visiting a pagan site, the way you do, she again ran off, only to return with another cross, photo available if required. This was becoming a habit.
Where was that then?
What?
Where was the cross at a pagan site?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Not much of a pagan
Never mind.
site with a
No,
cross
I was
there,
going to
is it?
say.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe the pagan site was alongside.
Could have been a cemetery or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
How many pagan sites are there in Wiltshire?
No idea.
Maybe someone will explain. Anyway, we then thought that maybe she had demons, but again, we brushed that off. It was just a coincidence. Two things like that on the trot. Later, sadly, my mum passed away, and the local lady vicar asked to come round and pay a visit. Flo, beautiful Flo, sidled up to her, all goodness, and butter wouldn't melt in her mouth kind of expression. So I made tea, and we all sat down next to the vicar for a chat. She was very impressed with Flo to start with, her nature and her beauty. Flo, well, she kind of looked after a while pretty disgusted with the whole affair, and she sat with her back to us. And then, to my horror, I noticed that this beautiful dog, so scrupulously clean, never had an accident,
Oh, no.
had a poo in the vicar's handbag.
You liked saying that, didn't you?
Father Simon, it went on for quite a while.
Brilliant.
Mortified,
Yeah.
I ran to the kitchen for a kitchen roll, handed it to the vicar, and she shoved it back in my hand and asked me to dispose of the offending object. Fair enough, I suppose. Horrified, but what to do? I'd never been in a vicar's handbag before, let alone to retrieve a dog poo. But I handled it well, and I thought Flo had just looked at me with a glint in her eye, happy at what she'd done. I knew she was quite pleased with herself, really. The vicar decided that she didn't fancy a cup of tea and left. Unsurprisingly, I closed the front door and wept. In fact, I sobbed with laughter. Wrong of me, of course, but it was surreal to say the least. As she walked down the drive, I'm sure the vicar was in shock. Flo was not fazed and never had an accident again, but the story doesn't finish there completely, Father Simon, as a couple of weeks later, on a slow walk, because Flo had hip dysplasia, we passed by the vicar's house on our way home, where a black cab was outside waiting to take the vicar somewhere important. We then suddenly heard a shriek, and there in the back of the cab, with the vicar, looking terrified, was our Flo, looking very happy. I went up to the vicar. She wants a lift, I say. She needs an exorcism, says the vicar. Which seemed like an interesting idea. Anyway, but we need forgiveness for Flo, but also for me for seeing the funny side for a couple of very awkward situations, all brought on by our satanic dog. Anyway, I don't know quite what led the dog to behave in that way, but it was entertaining while it lasted, unless you were the vicar and you had something important in the handbag. Anyway, Sister Rebecca.
That was very entertaining. I love the glint in Flo's eyes as she had a poo in the vicar's handbag. Very, very funny, and I think it was all just coincidence. Flo obviously just liked sticks that are in the shape of a cross. That's why she kept
Is that right?
collecting
She just
them.
thought it was a stick.
I think she just thought it was a stick, exactly. And all coincidence, apart from the slightly creepy bit when she gets into the black cab with the vicar at the end.
You
But
can
I
imagine
think-
the vicar would be quite scared at that point.
Yeah, you can imagine that. But obviously it wasn't Alison's fault, and the dog didn't know what she was doing, so I'm going to forgive everyone.
Maybe the vicar had been reading Carrie, or maybe she'd seen the movie, the Stephen King story. That would be pretty scary. What do you think there, Sister Bobby, from the Priory?
Like Rebecca, it is just two sticks together.
Yeah.
That's what the dog sees, so it's absolutely fine. The thing is, it's never really the animal's fault. It's our fault, isn't it?
I think it's the dog's fault for having a poo in the vicar's handbag.
Yeah, but the dog needs to ask to go out. So, I mean, I have a dog who always asks to go out. Always,
Has it ever
always,
pooed in your
always.
handbag?
Never specifically. So the thing is you're absolutely forgiven for such a direct, brilliant hit, and no one should take themselves that seriously, really too seriously. I love the thing about dogs and lots of things about animals and children. They really do go, look, it's just fun. Life is absolutely forgiven. I hope more dogs come your way.
But yes, okay, very good.
Okay.
Brother Matthew.
I think we're all going to be unanimous about the fact that this dog is not the Antichrist. What we're also
You never know.
Well, I'm going to say no, it's not.
Okay,
that's where my money's going. Also, this confirms my prejudice about cute animals. Just get away with everything. They can do anything they want. Cute animals. Oh, didn't they look so gorgeous and lovable? And they can get away with quite literally doing that in a vicar's handbag. And apparently that's okay. So I am not going to forgive just because I'm fighting back against animals who think they're cute and think that the rules don't apply to them, that they rise above society.
That goes for children as well.
That goes for everyone who is cute, who thinks that the rules of society don't apply because I look cute.
This one comes, well, we changed the name, but as we normally do, comes from Katie. And it's loosely got a food theme there. And also, we should just say, don't try this at home. Even if you're slightly tempted, don't try this at home, okay? Simon, my name is Katie. I am 10 years old. So instantly, this is different to most of the letters that we get. I'm 10 years old. The subject of my confession happened when I was 9 years old, during the Tour de France in Yorkshire last year. It involves my great-uncle Jim Bob Stephen and great-auntie Doris, who came to stay with us and watch the tour. The day before they arrived, I'd been doing my homework at the kitchen table, which involved lots of cutting and sticking. My mum asked me to tidy up, but I didn't do a very good job. And I left some stuff out on the table, including the scissors and a large bottle of PVA glue. Cheap stuff in a plain white bottle. Everybody knows it. On the first day of their visit, Mum and Dad were at work and my brother and I were at school, so we left Uncle Jim Bob Stephen and Auntie Doris at home with information about things to do nearby, places of interest, and some jacket potatoes ready for their lunch. They had a nice time while we were out. I think they went for a walk near our house and enjoyed the potatoes, even though Uncle Jim Bob Stephen has a problem with his sense of smell, which means he can't taste things very well either. The next day, we were all at home together and about to sit down to a big salad for lunch.
Oh, good.
Dad asked... Well, just the mention of salad.
Yeah, let's all sit down for the big salad.
Anyway, but this is a salad with a difference. Okay. Dad asked who would like mayonnaise or salad dressing with their salad. Uncle Jim Bob Stephen said he would just like to have the salad cream that he'd had yesterday. Dad looked a bit surprised and said, "We haven't got any salad cream." Uncle Jim Bob Stephen said, "Yes, you do. There's some already on the table," pointing at my bottle of PVA glue. And I suddenly realised what he had poured all over his jacket potato yesterday, just about at the same time as Mum and Dad also realised what had happened. They were a bit cross. I was a bit embarrassed, but no one said anything. So now, says Katie, name changed, I want to confess to Uncle Jim Bob Stephen that it wasn't salad cream that he put on his jacket potato. It was PVA glue, and I hope his insides are not too stuck together. I also promise that I will always tidy away properly from now on. I hope you'll forgive me, and that no one else who hates tidying up as much as I do will try this at home. Katie, P.S. This was typed up by Mum, who has almost forgiven me, but would forgive me even more if she could see more improvement on the tidying up front. Well, typed with feeling, I think. Okay, well, it's an understandable mistake, maybe, if you can't tell the difference between salad cream and PVA glue. What do you say,
That was very,
Sister
very
Meg?
sweet, that confession. All the thing about she's going to try harder to tidy up. So I think that it's a bit... I know that Uncle Jim Bob Stephen...
Uncle Jim Bob Stephen,
Yeah, I know that he
yes.
couldn't taste very well, but couldn't he tell that the texture was a bit weird? And didn't he get all kind of gummed up after his
Because the
baked
great
potato?
thing about
You would have
salad
thought?
cream is all the vinegar that's in there, but you'd have thought that might
Yeah.
cut through, but maybe not.
And you would have thought that maybe he sort of realised it was glue when his teeth started to stick
Yes.
together or whatever. But clearly he didn't realise, so obviously there wasn't a problem. He just swallowed it
And he
and then he
wanted more.
digested it and he wanted more.
more,
So I don't think PVA, I don't know, correct me here, Nigel. Is
not
it
toxic.
water-based? It's not
It's not
toxic, is it? That's why
toxic.
kids are allowed to play with it, right?
Trust me, we
but
checked
I suppose you're probably not supposed to eat it in large
Obviously,
quantities.
don't try it at home. It is
Nevertheless,
non-toxic.
I think it was a very cute confession, and so I'm
Thank you.
forgiving.
Yes, novice Nigel.
Happy with lots of chopped grass, as in last week, instead of watercress. Old Jim Bob Stephen, really, his palate completely shot, isn't it? Absolutely. He didn't even care. He had a whole jacket
Wanted
potato.
more. Thank you.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, nothing to forgive, absolutely. It was a genuine mistake. It does remind me when I used to ask to do tidying up at the end of meals and what have you. That was when I always used to have to go, I must just go to the loo.
Everyone does that.
But third child, probably got away. Dishwasher, just must go again. But did. So anyway, I did quite regular bowel movements. I thought I'd
That's
share
quite
that.
enough.
Katie, well done.
Thank
Completely
you.
forgiven. Moving on to
Yes.
Uncle Matt.
Okay,
Matt.
how bad is your sense of taste if you can't tell the difference between glue and salad cream? Very bad is my
Is the answer, yes.
honest and expert opinion. And also, if you're 10, I mean, obviously, if you're related to me, you have to tidy up. But if you're 10, do you really? I mean, I think at that age, that is the only age where you can get away with not having to tidy up quite so much. So I am going to say forgiven. And once you reach 11, obviously, at that point, you definitely have to be tidying up far more.
All right. Well, that's it, and thank you very much indeed. What do you make of that collection of confessions? That's what we had this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Did it spark a thought? Would you like to send us yours? You never know what could happen. confessions@bbc.co.uk, that's where you send it, or you can go via the website. More in a week, and if you missed our sensational guests, Sebastian Folks, Davina McCall and Neil Oliver, you can head to the iPlayer, where they're all clipped up and ready to go.